Welcome once again to Reach Out, the radio broadcast, podcast, audio video podcast experience and experiment here at the Voice 17104. Another Friday edition, and I'm getting to like Friday.
Getting to be a habit.
I like Wednesday well enough, it's fine, but I also like Friday, and this seems to be a good alternative time to do the show, at least at this time of year.
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't do it Wednesday because, Bill, what were you doing? What were you up to?
I was up to my neck in bicycles is what I was up to.
I
We had
see. Where'd you get all those bicycles?
actually they were a donation from the youth mission that collected them at the Christ Community Church
Okay, yeah, I've been there.
in Camp Hill. Quite a an effort on their part. They provided us with 42 bikes, and we had 48 kids.
That's pretty good though.
No, we were very fortunate because you have to fit bikes by sizes, and as random as this all was, people just giving up bikes and not adjusting them to what the group looked like or anything like that. We said we had more little kids than we had big kids. That's the only thing we said, and it turned out basically almost exactly the right proportion.
Wow.
We just had five kids who didn't get bikes, and we made up for that, of course. But it was a really fun day. We had a training in the morning. People in Pennsylvania should be aware, and it turns out, yeah, the more and more I talk about it, the fewer and fewer people I find are aware. But just as the driver, the automobile driver, the adult driver, and the bicycle drivers are adults too. But
Oh yeah.
what I'm
As you know,
yeah, yes,
as someone who's taken his bike to and from work and all
yes,
around the city for years.
yeah.
Anyway,
But the thing is that there are laws, just like you have the law. It's a vehicle. It's on the highways.
I can't
It's
tell you how many times I have seen bicycles just cruise through intersections, and
Mhm.
if they weren't paying attention, I've never seen anyone get hit. Oh, I know what happens, but if they weren't paying attention and the car was just coming right through,
Yes.
wouldn't be good.
No, it wouldn't be good. Well, we got a hold of the driver's manual for bicycles, and we use that to talk about the law and the safety issues that are illustrated in that manual. And the kids, the kids are very bright. I mean, they do understand, and they do understand why. And when you talk about, I'll just mention this in terms of safety and something that one should always be alert to while they're on a bicycle is that should make sure that they are obvious. Obvious. That means that drivers can see you, whether it's day or night. And that at night, for example, if you wear reflectors and reflective clothing, it should be that sort that identifies you as a body, not just as some streak of light going down the road. And you should have your reflectors, and you should have flashing red lights on the back, as far as I'm concerned, not just a steady red light on the back. You could go the extra mile and flash that light on the front, even if you have to shake the handlebars to do it. But you want to alert people who are driving cars on the road that you are there. You want to be obvious. And the other thing you want to be is predictable. You should never surprise a driver. You're talking about people coming out into the intersection. That could be quite a surprise to a driver.
Oh, I know right along Dairy Street. That's happened to me several times. People, not even at an intersection, between parked cars,
That's
just
another thing.
fly out onto the street.
That's another thing.
And I would feel
Right,
terrible if I would
right,
hit them. But at the
right.
same time, like, if you don't give a driver enough time, there's
No.
nothing they can do.
Well, that was part of our admonishment to them. When you go down the street, you go down in a straight line.
Yeah.
Don't go back and forth between parked cars. Once you disappear behind that parked car, the driver who's behind the driver who just passed you doesn't know you're there. You come out from behind that parked car, like you said. You know, they could scare the heck out of you, but they could also have much more serious consequences. So we spent the morning talking about the rules and safety, and then we had a nice barbecue. One of the parents in our group has a barbecue business, and He threw a barbecue for the kids and the parents, and then we walked over to the mansion. And
Which mansion?
this is 13th Street. Uh, I'm trying to think of the name of his ministry. It just escaping me right now. But Tannum is over there. Tannum has actually bought the mansion now, and it's a nonprofit that's over on 13th Street that's doing a very good job of working to clean up trash and other things around the area,
Huh.
as well as others like classes and making a facility for people who want to serve to come and stay and serve the community.
That's good.
So they stored our bicycles. They have a carriage house there. They stored our bicycles. So we were able to bring the bicycles up and use their grounds for the bicycle distribution. And it was just a nice setting. It was a nice afternoon. And I'm glad to say that we did it. And it's wonderful to see the kids on their bikes and to see their smiles and of course to repair a flat tire or two.
That's what I saw you doing today.
Yeah.
And I guess they don't all come in perfect shape.
No, they don't all come in perfect shape. You got to do a little bit here and there, but
Really, it didn't seem like too much of an
yeah.
ask. Seeing when you're getting 40 some bikes, I
Hey,
bet. And just how'd the kids react? Like what were the what was the feeling there
what
at
is
the
the
time?
feeling of a kid getting a bicycle?
Yeah, I just want to hear it. I know, like I just want to hear it.
It is joy.
I figured.
You know, the, yesterday morning, the first thing the kids do when they come in is they write something in their journal. And one of the young ladies wrote, "I feel so blessed. I got a bicycle." You know, I mean, she wrote down that she was blessed, but you know, the first thing that I see in terms of their faces, especially when they pick out the one that's going to be theirs and they're walking away with it, is joy. It's just sheer, pure, unadulterated joy. I mean, it's just a
Nice.
pure thing. It's so innocent and pure. I mean, it's so real.
That's nice.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but that's where Bill was on Wednesday, and I feel like that's a pretty good reason not to be able to do the show. It seems like a pretty valid excuse, I would say.
Well, if you go down and ask our kids what I should have done, I think they will all
Mm,
agree that I did the right thing.
I suppose. No, undoubtedly. But that team from Christ Community, there's been a small team of youth here all summer, right?
No, no, no. That's an altogether different situation. Now, you should be aware of Youth Works.
Okay.
Okay, then that team did their mission. They came here for a week and they stayed in the church and they did their mission here in the community. That's the team from Christ Community.
Hmm.
Now, Youth Works is a nationwide organization, and some
Yeah,
of them come from Canada as well. And
they've been here for several years, right?
oh, we've been in partnership with them now for 8 years.
Nice.
And every summer, every week, we get 10 new volunteers in terms of kids. This week, they were from Wisconsin and they were from right here in Pennsylvania, from Chester County. And, but they could be from West Virginia, they could be from South Dakota, they could be from anywhere in the United States. And they decide that what they want to do with a week in their summer is to go someplace where they don't know anybody and volunteer their services to those people in the community.
Feel some of that culture shock,
Yeah, well, yeah, that too. But
but that's an
but
intentional choice. It's like they
is it
want to
they
be
right? Yeah, these kids.
immersed in it.
You see, you have to understand they go to a system where it's a self-qualifying system. You have to decide first of all within your head. I want to go someplace where there's different kinds of people than myself and serve and learn. And you have to decide that, and then you have to commit yourself to that a year beforehand and go through the process of raising the money that will pay for your trip. So that whole process, if you don't fall out along the way, it obviously self-selects you as one of the people who is committed to serving others.
That's good what you said when you said to learn, when they're not just coming here thinking they know
Oh no, no,
everything and
no,
thinking
no,
they know the neighborhood and
no,
the people.
no. They're
But
smart enough for that. That's another part of the selection
yeah,
process.
that you gotta be ready to learn, and not to say that you can't bring your own gifts to the
You
table, but
should bring your own
you
gifts to the
gotta
table.
you got to learn the
We
lay of
want
the
that. We
land
expect
first.
that.
Like you got to,
Well, all together, both things happen at the
yeah.
same time. You're teaching our kids a new song, and they're teaching you a new walk. I mean, we walk the streets different from somebody from South Dakota.
I guess that's true. I suppose so. I don't know. People always say I walk weird. I don't know. Like I don't have a care in the world, which isn't true, which isn't in fact true,
Uh-huh.
but I've heard it referred to as the white people's walk.
White people from certain places. I mean, look at the white people around here. They
This is
don't
what I'm.
walk like
This is
that.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, you know,
I don't know. I don't. So I don't know about that. That might be the case, and
some
it
white
might not.
people from certain places got swaggers and all that stuff. I mean, and those
Yeah.
guys out there who take over ranches and take over federal land, they ain't no pushovers.
Nope. So this is actually a great segue into our first segment, which I really just wanted to talk for a little while today about what we have discussed many times on the show, but remains, I think, at the core of everything we do. It is that income inequality in America and around the world, but especially for our focus in America, and just what it's all about, like where it's going, where it's headed, where it's been, but also how it's orchestrated, and also where we fall amidst other what we would call first world countries. And I think that nomer is a little bit skewed at this point in the criteria.
I would add in this discussion even third world countries.
That's you're probably right. Yeah.
Well, the thing that's right about it is that there are, for example, we're not just talking when you're referring here to, in particular, I see to Broken Ladder, the Broken Ladder, which is Keith Payne's study, psychologist, uh, North Carolina, a neuroscientist. He's not just talking about income. He's talking about the psychology, the psychological effect of inequality in all its ramifications. For example, what he means is like you can have a great deal of income, and one of the things that's happening to you is that you're not happy. And when we looked at those societies that were the most happiest, if you recall, a lot of those societies didn't have that much income. North Korea, for example, it doesn't have so-called first world, but the lack of inequality leads to people feeling more.
Distant
If
and
you have
separate. Other.
separate, if you have a great deal of, of inequality,
Yeah.
so you can have a rich country, like we're a rich country, and a great deal of inequality, and so your happy quotient is down, and as you say here, your health is down, and your ego is down because vis-a-vis other people, you don't see yourself as being worthy or worthwhile.
What I like about this book, The Broken Ladder, by Keith Payne, written in 2017, is that it really gets you into the mind and into the psychology behind what's happening, and as you said, into the physical effects. And I think it's very interesting that it's not just the aggregated wealth of a country or even the average income of a country that determines happiness or contentment or
Hmm.
however you want to define it. But it's, I don't know, when you have that much separation, it's as if it's a palpable like force that's like pulling people apart at the same time, much like, I don't know, I don't want to be too dramatic about it, but much like cancer,
Well, that's a good one.
like an atomization,
Uh-huh.
of our society.
Hmm. That's a good one. Yes. Inequality means that you live in a society, for example, that's not as hierarchical in its structure.
Tell me if this reminds you of anything. A society that is becoming less healthy, more angry, and more politically polarized.
Yeah.
Sound like any places you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
I live there.
That's
For example, just to go aside,
mhm.
if you work in a small, somebody makes widgets together, and you could go to whoever it is and you could say, "Hey, I think this is blah 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 blah," and they say, "Oh yeah, that's fine. Let's do that." Call everybody together. Hey, so and so says so. You know, in other words, the more cooperation there is, and the more it's cooperative in its structure, the happier all the workers are if they themselves can participate in decisions, etc., things that take place in their workplace. The more that structure is hierarchical and decisions are made from the top and passed down, and those workers have nothing to do, you know, except exactly as they are assigned or else.
And we'll get into that a little bit later too when we talk about Amazon, and that is pretty much the automation of that.
Mm,
That's the pretty much the computer programming of human beings through wristbands.
hmm
It's pretty much what that's like. But this is a really good point because my mom always told me this, and I thought, well, I mean, I don't know, but it really resonates with what we're saying. That she said, well, she grew up in a poor coal town, and everyone was poor. It was during the 50s,
hmm
60s. At that time, it was a low income place,
hmm
but everyone was poor.
Yeah.
There weren't, I mean, there are a few individuals
Yeah.
who were doctors and lawyers, but there weren't these huge corporate tycoons. There weren't
hmm
these CEOs and corporate leaders who were making 50, 100 times what everyone else was. For the large part in her town, like everyone was just, you know, getting by.
Right.
And you couldn't tangibly see that kind of income disparity
hmm
right in front of you. But especially in this age of digital communication and the internet, we see the super rich right in front of us every day.
hmm
We can go on Twitter, we can go on Facebook and see mansions, planes, jets by people who, and I mean no offense, especially, but are just somewhat idiots or just dummies. And I give everyone the potential to be that kind of fool. But what I mean is like that people see them and they're like, well, that could be me. It's that whole bastardization of the American dream to say, well, I could be that multi millionaire, so I'm gonna stick with the system. I'm gonna play the game, and I'm gonna make it in that way, and I'm gonna step on anyone who I need to.
You know, I know I can't help but mention at this time Elon Musk. Elon Musk, who
God.
this week apologized for calling one of the cave rescue guys a pedophile.
Why?
Why? I'll tell you why.
He's diving into a cave to find little boys. Is that why?
Elon Musk saw himself as becoming the hero. You recall that he offered to send a submarine.
Yeah, and we didn't mention that at all, and I'm glad we didn't because that completely wasn't the purpose. But now it's very important because it comes up. Like he was trying to make himself a part of this
Yes,
for
and
his own sake.
and the guy, this guy, Usmos, Usworth, Vernon Usworth, was a divers who said that uh, submarine that he was going to send them would not be useful. And he got upset because they told him his submarine wouldn't be useful, and therefore he couldn't be no hero.
Wasn't it just logistically impossible to use that kind of device inside that cave with a tiny amount of space?
I can't imagine. They need a certain flexibilities if you look at the kind of thing that they had to go over and
Yeah.
under and around and all that kind of stuff. I can't imagine many things being suitable for that operation. And son of a gun, if the people there who know and the people there who are the professionals say to you, hey, thanks, but no thanks, accept thanks, but no thanks. Is your ego driving you to the point of just plain stupidity?
Oh, are you talking about the guy who put one of his cars in a rocket
Yeah,
and blasted it to
that guy.
Mars?
Yes,
So I think we
yes,
kind of know what we're dealing
yeah,
with
yeah.
here.
Or his ego then is out of this world, demonstratively.
But bum. Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah. But what kind of a person, and think about this for 1 second. You don't like something that somebody said to you, or somebody told you that something that you intended to do would not work. Where do you go from there to try to harm somebody by putting out on the internet that that person is a pedophile? What is wrong with your brain that you just go deliberately out of your way to think of the worst thing you could say to harm somebody, having not an inkling of truth in it that you know of? But that's what you're going to use just because it hurts.
It was simply lashing out. It was trying to inflict the most damage that you possibly could. Because even with the rumor of that, and if look, if anything like that's true, that's horrific. That's a terrible thing. But if it's not, then you've ruined someone's life. You've taken your fame and your fortune and your celebrity, and you've levied a baseless accusation against someone just to feel good about yourself. You just destroyed. You try to destroy someone's life just for the heck of it, just for fun.
Just because they said to you that thanks, but no thanks there, Elon.
Yeah, they didn't call him out and say, "Well, you're just some kind of billionaire interloper trying to get his name in the papers," which they probably should have said.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
from my understanding, they were, generous about it. Like, we got this, and it turns out they did. They absolutely did
They
have it.
knew what they were doing.
Yeah, they had it.
You know, they knew what to do, and they certainly knew the requirements of the kind of gear that they would use. As a matter of fact, some of those guys, as we mentioned last week, invented some of that gear. They invented it out of long experience with cave rescuing, not out of theory and abstraction and your $1 million research lab. Abstraction versus experience. Being there versus being at a distance. Without exalting oneself compared to the millionaire with the out of the world ego who wants to insinuate himself into heroism.
It's very much like those individuals, and I know it's a pretty big jump, but it gets back to something that's going to be happening. I believe it's on the 5th of August in Harrisburg. That is the walk for Shalik Moss. They're going to have a walk throughout downtown. It's going to be like a vigil march, I believe, on the anniversary of his death. I believe it's the second anniversary.
Second.
It's called Shalik's Walk. It's going to be on the 5th. But I just think of his mother who pled with the police, let
Not
me put my life on the line. Let me try to talk to him. And really, it similarity to this situation resounds in that these people are like, don't worry about it. We're going to put our lives on the line to save these kids, but they're actually permitted to do so, and it worked.
well, the other aspect too is like if the police would have acted in an equal, I mean, how as in an equal way with respect to the mother, they would have joined with her in working out a solution. If Elon Musk had acted in a equal way instead of a superior way, he could have joined like everyone else who humbly joined a team, equal in their ability to effectuate a situation and talk about it and come to some solution. Maybe he could have been helpful if he didn't do it from the top down. I know what to do, and I'm giving it to you, and you're a pedophile if you don't listen. Here we talk about inequitable, what inequitableness leads to. It leads also to those people who are in a hierarchical situation thinking of themselves as being so much more significant than all the rest of us.
As kings, as gods, as whatever you'd like to consider them. And hey, I get it. When you are a multi billionaire and will have no want of any material comfort for the rest of your life, when you and your family for 100 generations could be taken care of, well, seeing as if the biosphere continues for 100 generations,
No,
but that's
you could forget
it's
that.
a whole other question. But no, it's very easy to see that you will have a completely different perspective on life than someone who makes a thousandth of what you make, or whose assets are a thousandth of what you have. Ironically, for him, that would be like $1 million. The assets would be yeah, he's a multi-billionaire, I think. Regardless,
You remember that shoe manufacturer in Massachusetts, I think it was, who had this very successful shoe company, contributed his success and wealth to the effort and sweat of his employees, shared with them his profits. You remember that guy? You know, he didn't walk away with just using people or being over people, but sharing as they all shared the work, they all shared the results of the work.
and I think the point is that you don't have to be a cruel tycoon. You don't have to be a person who tries to get every ounce of blood from the stone. You don't have to be that person who cuts every bit of excess and who leaves no margin for humanity. I would say error, but I'll just call it
Mhm.
humanity because, well, we are
Mm.
imperfect. And if you're looking to replace us with machines, well,
Well,
then
we're on the way.
fine, but give us some of the proceeds from that. But therein lies the rub when we talk about automation. But anyway,
What they want to do is automate everybody out and automate all the profits in. You know, it still comes down to social welfare. But negative connotations that we put welfare. Welfare, it means that you're doing something for the good of the society. The welfare of all of us is something that should be important to us because that's why governments are instituted among men.
there so many people are taking advantage of Social Security in the system, and I'm like, well, I see what you have a roof over your head and to have a meal and survive. I don't think it's a lot to ask to provide resources for one to survive. That doesn't seem above and beyond anything to me.
I go first. If I'm going to cite anybody on that, I would cite first the founding fathers, even though I don't know about the extent of the sincerity of all of them. But that governments are instituted among men for the good of the governed. In other words, to see to our welfare, to see to the society itself. All of the resources of a society are first meant to develop the welfare of its people, to provide for that society and for its good. It is not providing for the welfare of a society where we take 780 billion of our dollars out of our people's welfare and put it in the hands of a military industrial complex. When we scrounge and waste our wealth, as Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther, mass destruction rather than on programs of social good, we've become the kind of nation that we've become, quite frankly, and that we're well on our way to solidifying because we're not making any room for change.
And as we approach that spiritual death, as he explained, or you could call it emotional death or moral death if you're not into the spiritual aspect. But as we approach that, we spend, we looked into it, the official figures were 600 plus $billion on weapons of war. I won't say defense because that is preposterous, but I thought it was a trillion. I thought
It
it was
is
a
a
trillion.
trillion. Yeah, I mean, look, all you're doing is talking about the budget right now. You're not talking about all that stuff that's spent off of the budget
The,
right now is 680
the
billion.
shadow Pentagon
How about all
expenditures.
the spending that's going on? When
Yeah.
you add it up, it's $1 trillion. You know, uh, if you think that you can go on spending $1 trillion and at the same time watching your society fall apart, okay, you want to talk about what is for the welfare of the people? Is a good bridge for the welfare of the people? You know, How about a good bridge that you're not on your way to work one morning and you fall off into the river, as we had happened in this country? You know, we got a D plus, I think it was, by the engineers who look into these things and look into our infrastructure. Last year we got a D plus. That's the state of our infrastructure, and it is not improving. 700 billion, okay, 680.
And that dwarfs other expenditures
Any
by other
other,
countries that
any other,
really just, oh, what I think what second place is China, and there's something like 180 billion at the
something like
most.
that. Russia's 47 billion,
Yeah,
and
frankly, that even sounds
not
a lot
only
to me.
not only is it 47 billion, but it's 47 billion and falling. Russia's commitment is not to building weapons; it's to decreasing its military budget. Ours is to increase not only ours but NATO's, and use that budget to dominate the world. But, ladies and gentlemen, what good does it do to dominate the world while your own country falls apart? What good does it do to gain all the wealth in the world and lose your soul?
That becomes your soul,
Oh,
and it becomes temporary and dry and rotten and fetid, and you can't take it with you. You just watch it crumble as you cross that great divide.
mm,
So
yes.
I saw a movie last week. I believe it was last Friday. It was really something. It was entitled "Sorry to Bother You." Did you see the piece on it on Democracy Now?
I didn't see it. No.
Uh, it was written and directed by Boots Riley, and the main character works at a call center. And well, at first it shows him at his uncle's place, and his uncle is about to lose his house, and he hasn't paid his rent in months because he doesn't have a job, and he's out looking for a job, and he applies for a job at a call center, and he gets it. He's making just a little bit and a little bit, but as he increases his sales, like there's always this vision of what they call a power caller, like in the distance, like where you make the big bucks and you get the nice cars and the nice houses. And of course, they present that as like, if you work hard enough and do enough, this could be you, that whole kind of thing. And so he works hard, and eventually, not to spoil it, but he accomplishes that. And then in this power caller spectrum, he has to sell, you know, weapons and prescription drugs and rare earth minerals and slave labor. And I don't know. It was a pretty good satire, and it
Yeah.
was
But
pretty accurate as
one of the
well.
aspects of it is like he goes. I of course didn't see it, but I understand this. Uh, you cannot go. Well, I was surprised when George Foreman became such a great salesman. Means that people buy what he advertises, what he puts his face to, what he puts his voice to. And it used to be in this country that you couldn't sell something if you had a black voice. If you talked anything that sounded like Ebonics, or they would listen almost to the bassness in your voice or some aspect of your voice, that. And so you had to learn to speak as white people would speak. And over the phone, it was such that when people, relatives, would pick up the phone and they say, "Oh, I couldn't tell that was you because you sound so much like a white person." You know, when it comes down to that, then you made your salesman. You can make your salesman status. I think that was a part of what his satire was about.
It was, and part of the reason he had started doing so well, and the older black guy who was working there, like, he's like, "You got to use your white voice," and kind of suggested it and like, taught him how to do it,
uh,
and he did, and that's where he gained his success, and then he just started using it throughout his normal life. His girlfriend broke up with him because of it, and because well, they were striking, they were picketing, and he scabbed it, he broke the
uh,
lines, he just
uh,
went to work anyway.
mm.
But no, it's good. There's a twist at the end that I won't give
Good.
away, but there's a character that I would say is almost an amalgam of Bezos, Musk, and maybe Zuckerberg, perhaps Zuckerberg. I don't know,
Mm.
but it's it's
for
good.
for a short time in my life, I was selling vacations to Las Vegas.
Hmm.
Did I ever tell you about that?
Hmm.
You know, we used to
But go on.
we do telephone sales, and what I learned was that you 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 didn't argue for something. What you did was that you made a pitch that took away the objections. You know, you anticipate what people. We start off with the notion. We start off with the idea that people want to spend money. That people actually like to spend money. That people can actually even feel powerful spending money. And then there are objections to spending money in certain ways. And you anticipate before you make your pitch what those objections are. And the process of your pitch is to take away each of those objections. And once you remove the objections, then you close. And so we learned this system, you know, and we used to call it picking the pocket over the phone because we make you go in your pocket and take out your credit card and read us the numbers on it.
Yeah.
You know, we call it picking your pocket over the phone. We had a guy there, oh, extremely white in his voice and diction and everything. He was a white guy. He was British in his origin, and I guess that gives him that quality. This guy could sell anything. He sold gold. He used to sell gold over the phone, and this is gold people never even saw. You understand? They're moving numbers from one account to another account and making hundreds of dollars in the process of moving these numbers around. You know, but I'll say this just to conclude my what happened to me selling vacations was I had some very enjoyable Sundays where I would go in and make $1,000 or so, and then one Sunday I went in there and there were these guys with these Mickey Mouse T-shirts on. On the back was a picture of Mickey Mouse, but on the front of these black T-shirts that they was wearing, it had three letters: F, B, and I. And it seems like what we were doing was right on the verge of being illegal. It was somehow quasi illegal, or quasi legal, or someplace in between all of that kind of stuff. But they didn't close us down. They raided the place, took away records, etc., and we were still told to come back to work.
Really?
But when I got back to work, I had lost my ability. I could use the same words, I could use the same pitch, but I just couldn't sell anything because something changed in my voice, in my inflection, in my tone, in my heart about selling these vacations to people. You know, when I first started, I believed the pitch. You know, I believe the rationale that we gave people for giving them these cheap vacations. But after you learn that it's not, if you could still go out and sell after you learn that you're quasi legal, then you're a different animal than I am.
And I bet, had you willed it, you could have done it, but it would have changed something
Oh,
about you. It
the
would have,
Scott guy, he kept doing it. He kept selling. Didn't bother him. You know, he told us he was in plenty of raids in different places. You know, he kept selling.
yeah,
It's well, you know,
true.
I don't know what the psychology is, but I can tell you what the outcomes are. Mine
Indeed.
was not good.
No, and that's real. I've known people who worked at call centers, and firstly, it's an incredibly dehumanizing place.
Oh yeah,
Same as an Amazon fulfillment center, which I find an incredibly ironic name
mm.
because I do not believe it would be fulfilling whatsoever.
Fulfilling.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've heard it's horrible, and just you get off because, and understandably, people are just mad at you for calling them and trying to sell them something.
You know
And
what? I'm
so,
sorry.
sorry, but something that Banksy said of course, the graffiti artist, he said that you are being advertised to nearly 24 hours a day. Everywhere you walk, you see an advertisement for something. And on your screen, on your TV, on everywhere, you are trying to be sold something. It's like your perception is almost not yours anymore. It's almost they're trying to own what they are, what you are seeing. And well, he said that in the service of saying like you are right to destroy advertisements and put graffiti over this or whatever. But yeah, no, I mean, I can, of course, and I don't think this is unique. Like I can tell when someone's just trying to sell me something, or just they're putting
Hmm.
on the spiel on the sales technique. And it's like just stop, just stop, and no wonder. And I know it's their livelihood. I get that they have to do that to live, or at least we're in a society where they have to do that to live. But I see why people yell at them. I see, and they have the dictates from their company, not to be flexible, not to give people discounts, not to give people a break, because that's going to hurt the bottom line.
Well, yeah, they start for the bottom line. Okay. The other I forgot about the advertising. You know, I watch the corporate news. I do it as a habit because I want to hear where they're coming from. And ABC, CBS, and NBC, I watched all three of them.
Yeah.
And they all told this story about Amazon Prime, or Prime Time, whatever they want to call it, Prime Week. It's a sales pitch. It's a commercial thing. It's a way of selling something, and they each of them had it on their news show as if they were giving you the news, as if this was a news story. If they wanted to talk about people boycotting it or Amazon having people so upset with them because of the racism and misogynism or whatever,
But they didn't want to talk
they
about
don't
that.
want to
I'm
talk
sure they
about
didn't
that.
mention that
No, they
whatsoever, did they?
right. No, they talked about this as if it was a big important news story that Amazon is having this Prime Week.
I could almost guarantee that they might be owned by Jeff Bezos in some form.
Mm.
They might be a
Well, they
division of
are.
Amazon Incorporated.
That's true in another way. I don't know if it's true that way, but it's true that all those people up there working together in that establishment class are owned by each other. Yeah, he owns
Everyone
them.
has their
They
finger
own
in
each
every
other.
pot.
They one way or another they own each other.
They have a significant interest in keeping that sort of obedience to authority going. That
Exactly
sort of
so.
obedience to,
Right.
well, the market
They
and the
feed
dollar,
off of
the
each
free
other
market.
and they feed against the rest of us.
The free market. Sorry, I
Yeah,
forgot to use the quotes.
free
Free
market.
market.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Right. Right. No.
But yeah, this Prime Week was everywhere, and we've talked many times before about the working conditions in Amazon factories and workplaces. So I'll just go over it briefly. You have people who cannot take longer than 5-minute breaks. You have people who avoid going to the bathroom and instead pee in jugs and throw them in the trash. You have people who, and this is ubiquitous with Amazon apparently, who wear bracelets and who, if they even go like an inch or so out of the right way, that buzzes. It buzzes like there's some sort of lab rat.
Wow.
You have this, and then you have conditions where a worker in an 8-hour shift walks 12 miles a day,
Wow.
and you have any number of incidents of injuries and deaths due to exhaustion.
What was that sci-fi movie where those people had that thing around their neck and they were in some kind of prison and it didn't have any gates or anything, fence or nothing? Didn't need it because if you went past a certain point, that thing around your neck blew up.
Is it Star Trek 6?
Was it that what it
I
was?
mean,
Yeah, okay.
they might have done
It
more,
was-
but I know
yeah,
that was in Star Trek
yeah,
6.
yeah. Well, that's what that sounds like. I got a bracelet. If you go past a certain point, like boom, it blows your hand off. You got to use one hand from then on.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
also the methodology for seeing how you get written up and fired.
yeah.
The idea you have 3 or 5 strikes. So I talked to a friend of mine. She works for AT&T. You can have 7 strikes, but
Yeah.
then you get beyond that, and you don't ask any questions. That's just it. You're fired. And she's at 7,
Mm.
which is scary
Wow.
because, well, she's got bills and she's got a kid. So, I mean, they're putting this all on one algorithm and they're not leaving any room for, I don't know, just human error or humanity. But with Amazon, like you can even get a strike. Let's say if you are just a few packages behind, like they call it picking, when you pick up a package and take it to where it needs to be. If you're even a few behind in your rate, that can count against you as a strike. And if you get 3 or 5, I forget, like that can just be your termination.
This is a system of servitude. This is a system of indentured slavery. I'm sorry. There's nothing as a workplace about it. It's a slave place. You know, Wh- I can remember when they first started coming out with these ideas. And people walked around assembly lines with a stopwatch, and they looked at your different movements and told you if you move this way or move that way and all that kind of thing. You know, the assembly line, first of all, in and of itself, was a dehumanizing factor. And then when they brought in these time, I forget what they called them, guys,
Efficiency
the time
experts.
efficiency experts. Then at that point, you're no longer a human being. You're just a work input machine.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
saw how efficient these machines and these assembly lines could be and how efficient these robots could be. Oh, they got robots. They
mhm.
really just salivated all over that. Like, wow, why don't we try to make our human workers as efficient as our robot workers? And that will never be the case, nor should it ever be attempted to be the case.
Why in the world does anybody get a mentality that somebody who comes to work for them is less than a human being? Why is it that we can organize our workplaces as if we're not organizing for a human activity, for a human productive community?
Well, I can tell you why. We are slaves to the free market. We are.
But, sir, excuse me a minute. We can still meet the commitment of the free market and have a work. Look, we know this, for example, that cooperatives are just as productive as other kinds of industry structures. If no place else, go and take a look at what's happening in Spain, at the productivity that comes from their communal
Yeah,
community
I also was.
working together.
That was powerful,
Yes,
and I
yes,
got to think it all stems or stems from there.
okay. But we have. It's not the only way to organize labor, and we know it's not the only way to organize labor, and we know that efficiency too is not the most important demand that you can make on an industry. We know those things. I give you an example of inefficiency. When I was at temporary labor at a Ford plant as a machinist, you know, throwing out some materials, and the guy says, "You're doing so so." I say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," but I'm giving them to you good. He said to me, "I don't want them good, son. I want them fast." In other words, they didn't give a darn about quality. They only
No.
cared about speed. Well, I'm sorry, that is inefficient because when you throw out the bad ones, you understand your production quotas go down. But they don't count that way. They count how many pieces they got today. They're not interested in efficiency, they're interested in authority.
And in easily quantifiable numbers, and in speed, and in making the worker just go as fast as they can, and trying to honestly computerize us, trying to make us machines.
Yeah, but see, I mean, what I'm saying is that they have always had this tendency, even before they had computers and all these other things. There's something about this authority game that they play. You know, you push a slave to the utmost. You push a serf to the utmost. That's like a part of showing how powerful you are.
Oh yeah.
You know, that you could push a human being, that you can dictate to another human being, that you could force another human being into the shape of your demands. We're not playing here a game for efficiency or even for production. We're playing a game here for the ego of the hierarchy. We're playing here for
Power.
the power. We're playing here for a man who will call another man a pedophile because he doesn't use his submarine. We're talking about that kind of idiocy, and we're talking about that kind of egotism.
So when we consider this, the counterpoint to power would be cooperation.
Cooperation, right? Community, you know, that we should all come into a common place and together make decisions and work together. That's how we started out. That's why we became a successful species. Only after we became a successful species does this other nonsense come into it that we could play these games amongst ourselves. But when it was time to go out and hunt, the guy who could make the arrow was the guy who could make the arrow, and the guy who could run and chase it down was the guy who could run and chase it down.
But also, everyone ate.
Everybody ate together. Together. Yes. Yes.
It's almost like we could learn something from that.
Oh, but we're not going to.
No, because we know the lesson. We just choose to not adhere to it.
Right. We have written ourselves about how mankind cooperates and about his hunt parties and tribal organizations and what was those things that allowed the human being to be successful. We understand that all very well. You can find many books, many a history channel or a nature channel retelling of it.
As I see men like the Trump boys and the founder of Jimmy John's out on the safari sitting with the decapitated heads of their
Right.
kills that they took down with the missile launcher after the beast had been drugged.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's anything more emblematic of the current state of our political and economic system, I wouldn't know what it is.
Uh,
We must subdue nature before we can even confront it.
we don't believe in nature. We only believe in ourselves.
We are, in so many ways, so separate from nature. There's no
We
wonder
think we are. Yeah.
we try to separate ourselves.
We don't even think
from
we need
nature.
trees. We can do what we want. We don't need rivers. Fish, we could do without fish. We could grow our own.
Yeah, it gets
Cut
into
down a
this whole
mountain. Sure,
idea.
we could put another tree up there.
Yeah, it gets into this whole idea of only vaguely, but transhumanism. The idea that we can upload ourselves or our consciousness or our being to a computer and thus never die.
Well, you better get started then.
This is what I'm saying. I think this is in the mind of some of these
Mm.
magnates and tycoons, and especially the tech tycoons who are probably really into that. That they can ruin the world as much as they want. As long as they have an underground bunker for their mainframe, they'll never die.
Well, you know something. It's like there's a unique thing. I mean, all the atoms in our bodies, they say, and it's probably absolutely true, is once a part of a star. Every atom in our body. But every atom in our body, as part of a star, is not our body. It's only when these atoms are together in this combination and created consciousness that is a result, is what our life is about. Disparate atoms in a computer is not our body. Possibly, I guess, in that circumstance, a consciousness, but a consciousness without awareness or sensitivity to anything. For example, why are we aware? Is because we sense, we sight, we smell, we think, we create.
Well, in the human form of awareness, certainly. No, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I can't even begin to fathom what kind of awareness a disembodied spirit or
Yeah,
especially a computer spirit
right.
would have.
Yeah.
And it may be something, but it's not this kind of awareness, certainly.
I've seen shows where you hear a voice come out of the universe. Where they're out there someplace in space, and this guy is disappearing into this atomatized world. But there's never a statement after that. you know, Nobody can explain anything after that. If there is no corporate entity, you know, is there life for us?
Philip K. Dick wrote an interesting story on this. And yeah, his stories are very interesting. I don't know, they're a little bit disjointed and somewhat disturbing. well, I mean, he was very much a paranoid schizophrenic, and I don't know, getting into his mind sometimes is a little bit much. But what he wrote is the idea of some sort of afterlife funeral service where after you die, like some part of you is cryogenically frozen. Maybe your brain, or they somehow were able to freeze your spirit or whatever and kept it in this cryogenic tank where it could interact with other frozen spirits nearby, but never really know where it was.
Hmm.
And then eventually get into the whole idea that, the whole idea of a dream within a dream or a world
Yeah.
within a world, that the spirits that thought they were out of it were actually like in an even deeper level of it, which was kind of neat. But
Okay, but where is that? I don't
just the
know.
idea
And what
that
does it allow? I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, we have in
con-
Cervantes, sueños son. I mean, even the dreams are dreams. Uh, inside the dream, his is the, que es la vida? What is life? Una sombra, a shadow, una ilusión, an illusion. Es medio buen pequeño. It's my grand expectation que toda la vida es sueño, that all of life is a dream, y los sueños son, and even the dreams are dreams, even inside the dreams are dreams. And this is his description of life. Uh,
yeah,
that's
no, it's a lovely way to think of it.
mm,
So, amongst industrialized countries,
mm-hmm,
the United States is third in poverty, and the Gini coefficient that we spoke about maybe a year ago,
mm-hmm,
I forget what the letters stand for, but it's really just indication of income inequality.
mm-hmm,
And we are third, third highest. And I believe, in terms of just within the history of the U.S., indication of income inequality,
mm-hmm.
and we are third. And I believe, in terms of just within the history of the U.S., we are pretty much right as high as we were in 1929, or maybe a
Mm,
little higher. Of course, that being the year of the stock market
yeah,
crash.
yeah. So we cannot say two things. We cannot say we improve as we go along, and we cannot say we learn as we go along.
No, just look at how we build buildings and how we build cars and computers. We plan things for obsolescence. We plan things to disintegrate. Else they would last too long and we couldn't make any money in 5 years.
We saw that report where they told people, clients, and telling them that there was no profit in curing diseases. See, if you want to make a profit, a cure, for example, AIDS. That if a person has AIDS and come to you, you're looking at like $40,000, $50,000 over the lifetime of treating that disease. But if you cure him, you're looking at no profit anymore on that individual on that disease. And the more you cure diseases, the less money you make. So why are we in the business of curing diseases?
Because
This
we're
is
not.
an actual Wall Street statement to the medical profession clients under their wing or whatever.
Who was that? I remember this. It wasn't Berkshire Hathaway.
No, it was it Goldman
Yeah,
Sachs?
Goldman Sachs. And of course, it resembles exactly how we are positioning, how corporations are positioning themselves in what they offer, selling and developing more opioids
Hmm.
and, well, less antibiotics and less
Hmm.
curative drugs. Of
And
course, profiting on antibiotics is its own thing.
but one thing it is to say that we have these top like Purdue type drug dealers in this country.
Oh, you mean the guy who is Secretary of Health?
No, I mean the guy who owned Purdue Pharmacy. I think their names are Hastings or Lastings or something like that. They moved to Canada to avoid but whatever. The Purdue Farm that makes the opioid OxyContin sold and changed. One of the things that they did, for example, when people became addicted and it became obvious that their spiel about people becoming addicted was not true, not becoming addicted was not true,
Yeah.
They taught their salespeople to go around to people who were doctors and say to them, the people who have this addiction is having a phantom addiction. It's a pseudo addiction. It's not a real addiction. And the way that you treat this addiction is by giving them more and more powerful of the same Oxycontin drug. And this is what they did. They knew it was a lie. They perpetrated a lie and a fraud out there on the American public, you know, and they even had that recognized in Congress and they even had it recognized in court. And here is my point. It's one thing for them to make those drugs, but it's another thing for us to allow them to continue to do this.
They are backed up by
They're
legislation.
backed up by legislation, they're backed up by Congress, they're backed up by our leadership, and they are backed up by the courts that are slow in prosecuting cases like in Massachusetts, etc., where they are bringing cases against them. In the meantime, people are dying while they sit on their hands in this country and allow it to happen. Now, I am against, obviously, the Purdue Farm and all those people who make these and who not only make them but perpetrate them in terms of street values themselves.
Oh, you see the pain management clinics in Florida, and you
Right,
see that town in West Virginia, a town of
right,
400
right,
people that received hundreds of
right.
thousands of
Yes,
oxycodone.
but the law and the leadership that allows it to go on and go on while millions of Americans are dying and families are being just torn apart. And the leadership that sits, example, talked about this problem. And what was his solution? To go and get the street dealers. People are selling drugs on the streets have nothing to do with Purdue Farm and these roadside pain management clinics. These, what are they called? Opiate farms. We know of them. We know how they operate. We know the fraud and the perpetration of these drug deals. And we know the complicity of certain doctors in the process. And yet it continues to go on because the leadership allows it to go on. There's so much that they care about the welfare of the people. And if there was a equity involved, you can be sure of one thing that all these people would be able to get together and say, stop it. But we have a hierarchical leadership that makes decisions from the top down, and it makes it a decision to allow millions of Americans to continue to die. It's a decision. It's not just an accident anymore.
Of course not. It is a conscious decision. And as we've said before about this late stage of capitalism, it is blood that will turn the wheels of the machine. And this is that in that form. You're getting people addicted to opioids and to drugs just to make a profit. You are banning medicinal marijuana just so that you can continue to make a profit. You are you are disencouraging. Is that a word? I
Yeah,
don't know.
well, may as
Sure,
well
it is
make it
now.
one.
Like you are dissuading people from researching other curative things because there's no profit in it. At this point, you are not in the healthcare industry anymore. You are in the, I don't know, the palliative care industry. I use the word care very lightly.
What do you mean by care?
Palliative, I don't know,
Greed.
maintenance industry.
Greedy.
Yeah, but greed is good, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What is it? Gecko? What is his name?
Yeah, I got a while though.
Yeah.
It'll just piss me off.
Yeah.
So maybe I shouldn't.
And you all know, you have to every once in a while say, "Oh, I missed that line."
Yeah.
The-
So sorry. Just another note on how unnatural we've become as a country. Our we want to ban breastfeeding. How
Yeah,
we
well, no, yeah, we don't want to ban breastfeeding. We can't say that. We can't say
it's
that.
what we
No,
want to do. It's what we
we
want to do though.
no, hey, hey, we're not. We're, no, but there's no profit in breastfeeding. You know, I don't know. What I don't understand is how. Look, everybody knows. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that the best thing for a baby in terms of its nutrients, antibodies, and its balance is his breast milk. Everybody knows that. There is no question about that. There is no argument about that. And it is fallacious. It is absolutely insanely fallacious for anybody to invent an argument that some formula or some other thing is better for a baby than what nature has already provided in cute little packages. Breast milk, you know. And by the way, milk, you know. And by the way, those breast milk packages are easiest to take on a picnic than carrying around a bunch of bottles. But it's true.
I
It,
mean, I mean, what you just never got to bring it with you? It's gonna be
but
with you anyway.
it's with you anyway. You don't have to invent any packaging or anything like that.
Yeah, and even developmentally,
You know,
I mean,
you,
nutrition aside, I hear so many things about not that bottle-fed babies can't develop healthy attachment, but just breastfed babies are
yeah,
so much
it's
easier to
just
do it. It's more
there's
natural.
there's no way of arguing against it, and yet the United States argues against it.
Honestly, there's a better argument against bottle feeding, but I don't think there's even a good argument against that.
There's a lot of
I think
arguments against
it
bottle feeding,
works. It
especially in
works.
third world countries.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
no, first of all, look, bottle feeding can never be the equivalent of breastfeeding. For example, the antibodies wherever you live, there are certain kind of bacteria, certain kind of germs that are around you, and your body develops immunities to them, and consequently, you can live in that environment without being sick. Everybody knows that. If a mother lives in this environment, she carries antibodies in her milk that protect the babies in that environment. Everybody knows that. So you cannot argue that the formula is better for the baby if you want to take into consideration protecting that baby from disease within the environment that that baby has to survive in.
Well, definitely not better, but I always want to be
Okay,
sure not to discriminate against people who can't breastfeed
well, that's a different
when
question.
they must
That's a
use
different
formula.
question. That's not a question of which is better.
Yeah,
That's saying that what you have to do, you have to do. But let's talk about what is best.
and it works well enough.
It works well. It does work well enough.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that anybody can argue in any area that you want to argue, nutritionally or otherwise, that formula is better for a baby than uh, than breast milk. No argument exists.
And they certainly haven't developed a formula that's better than breast milk.
They can't. And number two is look. What you want to talk about? One of the most look when you have a third world country, which is where the market is that we're talking about here. We're not talking about the first world country. We're talking about a third world country where a lot of things exist that disallows actually for proper preparation of baby formula. The availability of good water is a good start. You know, the availability of money. You have to buy it. It's not produced by nature in your own body.
And there's a rub.
And when you start buying something and your money gets low, you cut down on how much milk you put with the water. And that is a fact. Everywhere, every time, without dispute, that is the result, and nobody can argue against that. This is what they do. A baby is born in the third world, and they give that mother free 2 weeks worth of baby formula.
Wow.
2 weeks. You know why 2 weeks?
Get the baby hooked.
No.
Oh, stop producing milk.
Lactation.
Yep.
Right. The mother will stop lactating and therefore she has to use the formula.
God, that's sinister.
Yes, sinister is
That's so
right.
sinister.
And you know who does this?
Johnson and
More than
Johnson.
any, Jay, they do. And guess who the biggest perpetrator is? Nestle's. Did I say Nestle's?
Mm-hmm.
Nestle's.
Of course.
Okay. And guess what?
Of course.
Ecuador, Ecuador made a proposal in the UN to support breastfeeding in third world countries.
What would that entail?
To support it,
Yeah,
it's just to support it,
just to say it.
just to say it, you know, and consequently, maybe some countries or whatever can take action because of that support.
That seems like
But we
almost
start with making a statement of support.
nothing.
It's nothing. Okay? The United States opposed it.
Was it the only country that opposed it?
It doesn't matter that there were other countries or were other countries. We don't know because it was withdrawn. Why was it withdrawn? Not because it's because the United States not only opposed it, the United States directly threatened Ecuador for even making the proposal. The United States threatened Ecuador with sanctions.
Uh,
The United States threatened Ecuador with a trade war. The United States threatened Ecuador that they would no longer give it any military, I don't know if they needed, support.
can we stop throwing our weight around for nothing?
And Ecuador
Absolutely
withdrew
nothing.
its proposal. We used all our weight, all our imperialistic might against a small country for proposing something that was good for the world, that is good for the third world, that is good for babies, that is good for these women who don't have to struggle when they have the natural product in themselves to pay for something that they can afford. Tricked into it by a 2 week free period. Like somebody gets you hooked on drugs. Yeah, try
Exactly
this.
what I was thinking.
Try this. You
Yeah.
know,
And probably with the artificial flavors and sweeteners in that formula, it probably is like drugs to a baby.
hey, I'm sure it tastes good. You know,
Not that I would know, but hey, breast milk probably does too. Been
well,
using it for years.
I've tasted breast milk. I love it. I mean, it's very good.
Yeah.
You know, there's no reason. There's no reason except for capitalistic greed to destroy the world, to destroy our future, to destroy babies, to destroy the natural relationship between a mother and a child, and the audacity to threaten somebody for proposing our support. That's just overwhelming to me, especially my own. To take a position like that, I've gotten used to these doggone Nestle's. I mean, they'll take water from anybody and do a lot of other dastardly things. That's one of the worst corporate enterprises in this world by business practice,
Oh, and they're everywhere.
and
They
they're
have
everywhere.
little arms in every industry and just use that to, I don't know, just take the resources away from the people whom, I don't know, to say that to whom they were intended, but on whose communities in which they exist. I mean, there are droughts in California, and Nestle's there harvesting water.
Yes,
But then fracking companies are also there harvesting water to do fracking.
and almond country companies.
Yeah.
You know, water intensive crops. You know, okay. The end result of all this is that we're so doggone smart that we are in the process of destroying ourselves. And recognizing this, we have an inability to stop. We have an inability to back up and make the corrections. We'll just go straight on along the path, recognize, and when your great grandkids say to you, "Hey, Papa, what were you doing when we started to run out of potable water?" You tell them you were watching a baseball game. That's what you were doing. At least something productive. We're doing nothing.
Mm.
We're allowing a hierarchical, inequitable structure to dictate the future death of mankind. We're doing nothing.
Yeah.
Baby formula,
Yeah.
baby formula, breast milk. Like there's a discussion.
No. No. And I mean, nutrition aside, it's better for the infant mother relationship. It's
Yeah.
just I don't know. It's one of those processes that just makes sense.
Yes.
It's by design.
Yeah. Hey, it's good for every other mammal except us.
Well, that comes back to the idea that we were positing earlier that humankind believes itself different from nature, believes itself different from other animals,
Yeah. Oh,
believes
gosh.
that we can write our own destiny.
We can make milk.
Well, I don't know. Then that gets into an interesting question because the FDA is about to outlaw the use of the word milk when it comes to almond milk
Yeah.
and any kind
Yeah.
of non-lactated milk.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't know what I think about that as someone who drinks, non-lactated milk pretty
But
much
yeah,
primarily.
but it wasn't. I mean, all those things were called milk.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not. I mean, milk was not simply a lactated product.
No, and this happened since the
Milk sap.
15th
What are you gonna do?
century.
What are you gonna call milk sap when you see a flower out there? What are you gonna call milk sap flower now? You're gonna call it what?
This sort of naming has gone on for 500 years.
Yeah.
It's not
Well, yeah.
new.
So
Almond milk has been around since the
uh
1500s.
the milk of the almond. I mean, it's the milk of magnesia too. I mean, they say it's the milk of things. You know.
Oat milk.
Okay.
I don't know. If you haven't tried oat milk, I very much recommend it.
Uh,
It's very good. But
well, I'm not even. Yeah. But just in terms of nomenclature, we've always referred to that being the milk of something, and that being the milk of a cow, and that being the milk of a goat, and that being the milk of an almond, and that being the milk of a plant, of a flower. You know, all these things were milks of something. And now we're saying that milk is only a specific milk. That's like, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that salt. The different salts, aren't there?
I know there's black salt, there's white salt, and there's sea salt, of course, and
Yeah.
then there's some kind of pink salt, pink
Okay.
Himalayan salt,
And then there's salts that we don't use,
bath salts.
bath salts, and I mean we don't use to eat. There are other things that we refer to as salts.
Clearly, we see what it is. We
Yeah,
see that this
yeah,
is a move by the dairy industry in
yeah.
order to get people to start drinking what they consider real milk again. Again, and I'm sorry. Firstly, your first step, if you want that to happen, should be to stop cutting off any more udders than a cow needs to give milk. It's to stop your incredibly inhumane, gonna hate that word, unethical business practices when it comes to those from whom you are trying to get milk. Firstly, there's that. Secondly,
Overproduction.
price it comparatively.
But how
Price it
about
right.
overproduction? I mean, from a cow, you will give that cow hormones. You will make that cow's mammary swell up. You will keep that cow in pain for her whole life, swollen, painfully swollen, in order to up the production of milk and overproduce the amount of milk on the market that you're trying, and all these other things as a result of trying to keep an industry going. That if you really talked about supply and demand and free market and all that kind of stuff, would not keep going.
You know what? You want to survive? Go grow some oats. Make some oat
Hey,
milk. Do something else. Evolve, just like the fossil fuel industry should have done.
yeah,
Like it should have done. Instead, we are here propping it up. We're
we pay
propping
for
up the
these
coal
industries, right?
industry. The coal industry that should have
It,
died
it,
50 years
yeah,
ago. That is what one of Trump's major campaign promises was. He was going to bring back coal.
yeah,
Was he
right.
also going to bring back the unicycle?
No, he was just going to bring back coal.
I mean, did he want to return to his childhood and bring back the Studebaker?
No, he's
I
just
don't.
going to
I
bring
don't
back
know.
coal.
I don't know. Is he
This,
just feeling nostalgic one
I
day?
like the Studebaker Hawk, by the way.
Look, I have no problem with the Studebaker. I just don't think we could start making them again like that. Probably because it's ten
No,
thousand pounds of metal, but
no,
you know,
no, it has nothing to do with any of that. His thing was a campaign promise,
yeah, get the votes of the
right?
coal miners.
And
Former coal
they've been
miner.
promised. I mean, he's not the only one who ever promised, but we got a lot of dying industries, so we keep promising things are going to come back, come back, come back. Okay, right, and they should by rights go ahead and die. We talk about capitalism, and we're talking about those things are being are being caused by a natural process within capitalism. Whether or not you prosper, whether or not you don't, whether or not you stay in business or whether or not your business has to close. It's supposed to be a part of the natural processes of capitalism.
Oh, you mean the will of the free market?
Oh, that's what they
The
call it.
market
Yeah,
isn't so
yeah,
free, though,
yeah.
when it
Right,
comes to big
right,
corporations or corporations
right,
who have political power and interests.
right. Yes, yes.
Which is why I always have to smile when I hear the words free market. Not a happy smile, but a wistful, rueful smile. It's like, well, that's how it goes, I guess.
But they lie, and capitalism is one of the things that's bringing a death knell to mankind. It's ringing its death bells, and
Oh yeah. Speaking of, just briefly, another terrible act of a capitalist, you know, entity. MGM is suing people who were involved in a mass shooting just so it can avoid any sort of culpability, any sort of liability. They're just doing it first. There are those who say it's a strategy to
yeah,
get it moved from state to federal court, but regardless, you are suing victims of a mass shooting, so you don't have to pay them any money.
I find two fascinating aspects of this story.
Only two.
Yeah, well, that stand out to me right away. The one is there's no such thing as morality. We don't
Yeah.
even consider that. The question is whether or not it's a good move or it's not a good move. You know, and there was a question of one lawyer who was on CBS who considered the PR look or the
Hmm.
optics of it.
Yeah. Yep.
I like that phrase, the optics.
Hmm.
You know,
Just how it
oh
looks.
boy, the optics don't look good. You know, but the other aspect of it that really fascinates me is that the law that they are using is a law that says that they are not allowed to sue MGM. Now, MGM is the owner of that hotel in which this guy stayed and bought how many guns and how much equipment up and down for how long,
And to
and
my
nobody saw it.
understanding, a multi-billion-dollar entity.
Okay. Well, there's a deal that is being made in our law with Homeland Security and the Patriot Act, and this is the way it goes. If you hire one of the firms that I have on my list, and I am Homeland Security, if you have ingratiated yourself and got on my list, and you hire one of the firms on my list to do your security, then you will be immune. I said immune from suit because of any terrorist attack.
Hmm.
Simply because you hired a listed firm, whether they did the job or didn't do the job. Now, here you have a case you had a firm that was hired to do a job of security in that hotel, and they watched this guy carry all these guns up there, and then when the shooting started, didn't even respond timely, and yet they cannot be sued because they were on a list maintained by Homeland Security.
Hmm.
I feel so comfortable. I feel so safe. I feel like if I am in the homeland, I am secure.
That's one of those entities that arose in 2003, just like ICE, that serves so little purpose. It provides security that we don't even need.
It doesn't provide any
And just
security.
the idea of calling it our homeland is just such echoes of racism and
And how about
just corrupt
in German? How
nationalism.
about the fatherland? I mean, why don't we just
Yeah,
say,
may as well just go right to that or the motherland, whatever you prefer.
you know, uh, no, I mean, but it's not. It's a bureaucracy that's just a way for certain people to have careers that make money. And hire other people and have a hierarchy and have a position in which they can make demands and exercise authority, but has nothing to do with security. If it's secure by telling me that if you hire a firm that doesn't have to do a job and you can't sue them because I told you to hire them, then I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel secure. I feel like you're pulling my leg, Jack. You know, Homeland Security is a joke. These were the same people who told me to tape up my room because of a gas attack. And then some people asphyxiated themselves. I'm telling you.
Oh, you didn't do it?
No, I didn't. I didn't
Well,
stick.
what if a gas attack would have happened?
I don't know what I would have done. I guess I would have just had to breathe the gas.
Because there's obviously a risk of a gas attack happening anywhere at any time, and you have to be ready regardless.
As long as they keep us fearful, they have authority. Being scared of anything. Russia are coming. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming again.
Yeah.
You
Uh
know,
huh.
we say that the greatest threat to us is China, and they haven't made an overture against us. We invent threats for our future to keep you afraid and to keep ourselves in office. And you keep being gullible and you keep falling for it. The Russians are coming again. Watch the Chinese. Libya's going to get you. Gaddafi's on his way.
Yeah.
Ooga Munga, here they come, ladies and
No,
gentlemen.
that's a good one. Gaddafi's on his way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the most advanced
Castro was
countries
such a threat.
in North Africa. Just
Destroyed.
universal health care, good medical, good education,
Yes.
good agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. African Union gold standard. Not anymore.
Mm.
So, how much time you got
I
today?
got like 30 minutes.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Let's see.
I do like to talk about Putin and Trump and
Yeah,
the related stuff around that. But I want to mention too, this CBS, just real quick, manager up there in Chicago. A woman comes in the store with a coupon that was mailed to her in the mail, and she took it to the store to redeem it. And this manager told her that it was fraudulent. I don't know what he meant by fraudulent, but it was fraudulent. Therefore, he wouldn't honor this coupon. And she gave him an argument. She actually disagreed. And he and another manager told her to get out of that store because she was causing conflict by coming in there with a coupon that was sent to her in the mail that they see was fraudulent.
must have been quite a coupon.
It must have been a hell of a coupon.
Like buy one get 10 free.
Yeah, it must have been. But they called the cops instead.
Yeah.
They called the cops.
It's on brand.
Yeah, it was a black woman.
Yeah.
And these two male managers was afraid of this black woman because she gave them some lip over a coupon. Yeah, the cops came. For Chicago cops, they're to be commended. They didn't shoot the woman. They didn't harass the woman. They didn't take any action against the woman. Maybe because she's a known woman and she's running for city council. But maybe because they actually saw the stupidity in it and actually had some sense of social justice. I'd like to give those cops that credit. I'm going to say that they had some sense of social justice,
Yeah.
you know. And CVS fired the manager
Yeah.
because they said they are trying to create a diverse clientele, that they're interested in diversity.
Great.
You can't argue against good outcomes.
No.
You know, the cops reacted well and the company reacted well.
You're right. But I would just like to remark on the fact that for this very innocuous, seemingly what should be expected everyday act of police officers to not arrest
Yeah,
a black woman
no.
for getting into a bit of a spat with a manager about using coupons. And you're right, it is commendable. I won't deny that. But the fact that it
That
is
is
the
commendable.
fact that it's commendable is
Right.
really telling. It's very telling.
Hmm. Yeah,
So, yeah, all right, let's see. We got like half an hour.
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Like I like to hit Israel too.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think we can do either of these complete justice.
Mm.
But I would like to just briefly mention the new law that was passed in Israel. They call it the nation state law. That it didn't have the part where people could establish their own communities based on race or ethnicity. They took that part out. But it does communities based on race or ethnicity. They took that part out. But it does allow, I believe, the removal of Arabic as an official
Yes.
language,
Right.
and it also encourages settlements.
Well, it's going to create a Jewish state officially.
It
It always has been a Jewish state, but it's going to create one officially. It's just moving along
it enshrines
the
into
path.
law
Yeah,
what
yeah.
has been the
Right,
practice
right.
for the last 50 years.
And the direction, because little by little they've been doing all this. I mean, look, moving that last settlement out of Jerusalem, what was that about? Moving those villages, moving those people out. You know, not only the creation of settlements, of course, but I mean just moving people out of their homes, what has been their traditional homes for hundreds of years. You know, what is that about? Israel said in its beginning that it was founding a Jewish state. I mean, well, why not believe them?
That's what we always say. If someone tries to tell you who they are, you should believe them,
Yeah, yeah, right. And not
whatever the
only
case.
did they said it was going to be a Jewish state, they said it was going to be a Zionist state, and both those things are true. You know, if you're a Palestinian today, you can certainly speak on Zionism.
And Netanyahu's still somehow president. How
And
or
not
prime
Nayu
minister?
is not only president, but he's still our friend. And he's still a friend of so many countries in this world. He can go around the world and be treated like a statesman.
This proven corrupt politician,
Yes,
this incredibly tribalistic, self-centered, just I don't know, like he's a slimy person.
he's welcome in our Congress.
Oh, he is
He's a friend of Corey.
a Booker.
Yeah,
Oh, I know. I know Corey's a friend of APAC. That's for
right,
sure.
right. I
To the
mean,
tune of millions of dollars.
yes. I mean, the, these are the people that we hang out with, which is a good segue to saying, but we're upset if we talk peace with Putin. You know, we can hang out with killers and thugs. We can hang out with Saudi Arabians and beheaders.
We can befriend Noriega and use him till he is no longer useful.
Yeah. But we cannot talk peace. To meet, there are two nuclear powers basically in the world. I'm talking about with enough bombs to make a decision and immediately destroy us, or we destroy them, and in the process, the rest of the world. There are two people at the heads of those two states. But what we insist in our own stupidity, in our own hegemonic imperialistic view, is that those two people shall not get together and talk peace. We prefer the threat of nuclear annihilation to talk of getting along and having peace. That's the position that we have taken above everything else, however else it is being said. The ultimate position that all these Democrats, that all these news pundits, that all these so-called news people or deliverers are taking is that it is better to have the threat of nuclear war than to have world peace, than to have people talk peace, than to have those people who are adversaries to sit down together.
We do not want to let
Adversaries to sit down together.
we do not want to let the Red Scare die. We do not want to quell the rising wave or tide of socialism in this country. And it's so easy to group them together. Just look how they did to gain patriotism.
Another has outlived any kind of usefulness it might have had if it did indeed have any usefulness. Everything word. What they did in Kosovo, what they did in Libya, what they did in Syria, you know, what they're doing by establishing bases all around Russia. It's insidious. It's absolutely insidious. And what Trump proposed is that they spend $1 trillion and upgrade their weapons so that they could do it even better. Trump went there to sell weapons, as far as I'm concerned. And he criticized NATO to the point that they decided they would spend more money on weapons. We're talking about arming the world, not disarming the world. And with that, somehow or another, we still have this narrative that Trump and Russia are working together. NATO against Trump, I don't understand it. I won't even try to begin to understand because it's nonsense.
Well, if I hear the word or see the word traitor just bandied about any more casually than I've heard in the last week, I've never seen it so much before, but I've heard traitor, 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 traitor everywhere. Every major news outlet and every Facebook internet page that I follow, it just keep referring to him as a traitor and using the word treason. And it's as though we're kicking up this kind of rhetoric and just the atmosphere to a level from which we can't come back.
You can't come back. They're saying this is worse than Pearl Harbor.
Like they're
This
pushing
is
it
9/11 all over again.
they're pushing it to the edge immediately. They're pushing it as far as they can go, and I
And for
don't
what?
exactly. I don't quite get it.
They are saying here's a part that really is incredulous to me. Take this the so-called left, the so-called liberals, the Democrats, the established Democrats. I won't even consider, but take the Democrats, okay?
Schumer.
And these were people who used to stand up because they said the CIA is assassinating people around the world, and that's wrong. The CIA is involved in these coups, and that's wrong. The CIA is moving drugs, and that's wrong. And to the man today, they are standing up as if the CIA is honorable. I saw Dan Coates, the intelligence chief on CBS, making fun of the president inviting Putin to Washington. The intelligence chief making fun of the president inviting a foreign dignitary to Washington. The Constitution puts the president in charge of foreign policy. The law that brings our intelligence organizations into existence tell us that they are being brought into existence to serve the president. You cannot be president there and criticize your own intelligence that didn't know that the Berlin Wall was coming down.
Well, this was also the intelligence that told us there were weapons of mass destruction in
Oh,
2003.
and the intelligence that overthrew the government in Iran, the duly elected government in Iran.
And I can't help but feel that the word intelligence is a strong word for it.
Is this the intelligence that was involved in the Bay of Pigs?
All that. All that.
This is the intelligence that's accused with some good evidence of being involved in a plot to assassinate John F. Kennedy.
And MLK,
Yes,
the director of Fahrenheit 9/11,
yes.
he information services or our FBI and CIA like not hear what you said 10 years ago in this movie? It's 15 years ago, but
He
still.
said that.
Yeah.
Michael Moore said that.
Yep. Mhm.
That's astounding.
I mean, he's always been much more liberal than progressive, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
The fact that he consciously said these things before and just got so caught up or whatever, and he's now decreeing them, he's now raising them up as some sort of emblematic
We,
bastion of freedom.
this is incredulous.
I know.
This is absolutely incredulous. You know, there is a. We talked about this last week or the week before about the fact that Democrats are walking away from the Democratic Party because of the established party,
Mhm.
and they have a hashtag walk out. It's called hashtag walk out. And on that, if you go to that hashtag, you will see people on their own home videos telling you why they are walking away from the Democratic Party. A poor lady, and you could just imagine her complaint. You know, these are real people. But Nancy Pelosi, excuse me, the lady who thinks that leadership and the reason that money raising, not as anything to do with the welfare of the people or making decisions that affect that welfare.
Well, the Democratic Party has no vision for anything.
Okay. Well, Nancy Pelosi says that the reason that these people are walking away is because this hashtag walk out is a Russian bot. She called a news conference to tell us that Russia is behind American people standing up on their own home videos instead of listening to what they have to say about her party that she's supposed to be one of the leaders of and hearing the voices of the people of her party. She is taking to the air to tell us that this is not her people, this is not her party. She is not listening.
The question then is, when is anyone in the Democratic Party going to take responsibility for the flaws and errors that they make?
They are not. As long as they can demonize Russia, we are into the McCarthy era. We are into, if you look at a Russian, if you shake hands with a Russian, God forbid that you should sit down and drink vodka with one, that you should be called before an un American House committee
Gosh.
and chastised.
Yeah.
That's what we are coming to. We are close to that. Very, very, very close to that. Anybody who talks to a Russian, here you got people ignoring reality. Here we go. Before Trump goes to meet with Mr. Putin, people ignoring reality. Here we go. Before Trump goes to meet with Mr. Putin, we make a move. And then, like 12 Russian intelligence officers, what did they do? They hacked the DNC and fed the information to WikiLeaks. Excuse me. If they hacked the DNC, the information that went to WikiLeaks was that the Democrats were doing some really underhanded, illegal stuff to Bernie Sanders. And that's what came out of those
But
hacks.
they never denied that.
They never denied that. The veterans, the veteran intelligence professionals for sanity, Raymond Govern's group, did the forensics on that so-called hacking of the DNC and concluded that it could not have been a hack. It had to be a download. In other words, an inside job. No one in all the media and all the intelligence and all the congressional committees and all the leadership that we have in this country has taken that evidence to mean anything. The Democratic National turned that hard drive over to the FBI. If that doesn't make you suspicious, I don't know what will. And that we ignore this, that the FBI did not do an investigation. How do we come around to accepting any conclusion with respect to that hard drive? It was never inspected. by our FBI, by our investigative authorities. And we know that. And yet we continue to make the accusation as if it's true. It was not a hack. We put these, and unfortunately for Mr. Mueller, the last one he did, somebody did enter, and now he's trying to get out of having to bring the evidence because you have discovery when you have a trial. Many programs ago, it said that I thought that he might even try to be an honest. Where,
I'm sorry, but I appreciate what you're saying, but that should not have been surprising.
yeah, I tried,
Yeah,
I did to give him the benefit of a doubt.
yeah.
But you know, he's the guy who lied when it came to weapons of mass destruction. Him and the same guy, Mike Morrell, who I saw interviewed the other day on CBS, saying that the president was a traitor. This guy lied to the previous president about weapons of mass destruction and got us into a war that killed million people.
Well, like
But
what?
he has the audacity to tell somebody they're a liar, and CBS has the audacity to use him as one of its pundits.
Well, just as with the raising up of Mueller as some sort of paragon of virtue and justice, I was not at all surprised that liberals lifting up the FBI and CIA as paragons of virtue and justice
Yes.
because it's one and the same action.
Oh yeah.
It's just giving credence to things you once decried as, you know, terrible and unjust.
Yes.
And does that not show that your statements about those at that time were politically motivated too? It
Absolutely.
wasn't just that you were caring about
Absolutely.
the nature of the organization,
Hey,
it's just that they were helping you lose.
look at this reality
Now
here.
they're helping you win.
Look at this reality. Here goes Obama. I talked about this a little bit before. Here goes Obama. He comes into office, and one of the reasons he gets elected is that he's going to make friends with Russia. He's going to put us on a better relationship, and people believed him. He comes in, and he has a Secretary of State named Hillary Clinton, and they go over to Lavrov, and they have this big red button, and they're going to have a reset of their relationship. We're going to now have friendly relations with Russia. Well, when she came back, the same thing that happened to Trump, these newspapers, this deep state, these people said, no, you're not going to do that. What's obvious to us now is that they kicked the heck out of Trump, and he turned around and said the things that they wanted him to say, except that he tricked them again. But we come to that. But when Obama caved, you understand, we didn't recognize Obama caving because he's so sophisticated and debonair, you know. It's glossed
Whatever
over.
you say.
She says she's going to start a war with Russia. She tells us she's going to bomb Russia and Syria. She tells us that Putin is a thug. She tells us she's going to do these things to Russia. And then we say to Putin, favor any of those candidates. Now you have one candidate that says shouldn't we be friends? Now you would be a stupid idiot to say, oh, well, it's all the same to me. It is not all the same to you. And you're a liar if you say otherwise. You favor the person who wants to be friendly to you, not the one who wants to bomb you, and he said so. And oh my God, are we up in arms? He favored a candidate. In 19 to a campaign in Russia, we sent consultants to Russia. We drove underground the Republican Party the Communist Party campaign because of the effectiveness of the millions of dollars in consultancies and advertisements, etc., that were produced for Yeltsin by the United States. And Time magazine had Yeltsin with an American flag on the front saying, Yeltsin, our man in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is interference in an election.
Well,
That is interference.
no, we know all about interference in elections. Let us not get it twisted. See Central America, see South
Hey,
America, see Asia,
there's
see
a
Indonesia, see Vietnam, see
and you know what else that's a perfect example of?
hypocrisy.
It's no, well, it's not only no, but when we don't get the results of meddling, if we want to call it meddling, something that sounds so is
Interference.
interfering, in another person's election. If we don't get the results we want, take Venezuela right now. We don't accept the results.
Hmm.
Take Honduras. You know, take Nicaragua. We go and we take Iran. Take Syria. Going way back to the 50s. We go in and we try. It's not only don't like we go and we overthrow the
Choose not to believe, even though it's been happening time and time and time again throughout our history. This is nothing new. This has been happening, oh God, since what? Haiti?
yeah. Well, at
Haiti
least
back in
I
the
mean when the French got kicked out of Haiti,
yeah.
and we made sure that the Haitians didn't achieve any kind of independence. Really,
Yep.
yeah,
It goes back.
it goes back.
Yeah.
You know, now, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not you want to believe, and I say it comes down to want to believe because we're talking about faith and religion here. We're not talking about evidence and fact. If you want faith or one of the believers, the Russians did it, and the president of the United States is a traitor and a colluder with the Russians, and that is the Russians did it, and the president of the United States is a traitor and a colluder with the Russians, and that Putin actually runs the country. If you want to believe that, okay, fine, go ahead and believe that. But let me put this question to you: the nuclear clock is at 2 minutes to midnight. That's pretty.
It's about time.
Do you prefer that we have a dialogue? One of the issues that was apparently talked the issues that was apparently talked about with Putin and Trump was to further reduce nuclear weapons. Do you need, not only should, but need, must, it's obligatory that we and back that clock up 10, 20 minutes or 12? Is nuclear a not important enough issue to you that you would prefer the two rivals talking as we had talked all past until deep state influence said that he would not talk to Mr. Putin, that he would not talk when there were issues, that he would not talk when there is conflict to be resolved, that we developed a policy of non talking to people who we disagree with. That's a narrative that we created.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That is true.
If we ever were, we cannot say that any longer. Or you that stood up for peace and discussion and conference and summit. I don't know one that stood up against nuclear annihilation and stood up against war.
Yeah, and that's really been pretty consistent.
Yes. Well, for the Secret Service. How could a black congressman stand for the FBI? Yeah. How about George Caucus when the Black Caucus was trying to really be a Black Caucus before it started taking money from the big cigarette companies that's so adamant about? She was one of those people. Raising the FBI? Are you kidding me?
Huh.
Come
Yeah.
on. Black Identity Group is a threat to America, is a terrorist organization. And Al Sharpton and Maxine Waters and others of her ilk do not speak out against them, but now speak in favor of them because of the Russians? I
That
don't know what else to say.
that says it all. Says it all, and of course, there's more to be said. But fortunately, we have reached the end of our time. We hope to see you again next Wednesday for an.
That's us.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
but
Still
show.
that's us.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
but
It still works.
yeah. Thank you for listening and for watching. For Bill James.